Hey everyone. Ciao, konnichiwa. Sono Matteo, piacere. This is Matthew Whalley, and I'm excited to be part of Humans of Telecom.
Hey everyone, a very warm welcome to Humans of Telecom, the Unplugged podcast. This is your host Anurag Aggarwal, Chief Revenue Officer at GMS. As you all know, this is a platform where we pull back the curtain on the fast-paced world of telecom and highlight the personal stories of key figures, industry leaders, and entrepreneurs from the telco space. And our guest today is an interesting mix of many of the above. I met him for the first time in 2018 at ITW in Chicago, but I didn't know the person I'm interacting with packs so much into one single personality. This person is a writer, an entrepreneur, an investor, and most importantly, a marketing and a communication strategist who has spent 2 decades telling telecoms, ICT, and B2B technology stories worldwide. This person has worked with a wide spectrum of companies, helping them lock in their go-to-market messaging and accelerate sales, be it billion-dollar businesses or brand new startups, and also everything and everyone in between. After years of editing one of our industry's leading publications, he jumped the fence and worked for the largest independent PR agency in the world. And now, this individual has successfully co-founded a leading boutique and global integrated marketing agency, which we all know about in our industry. What makes him a great fit for Humans of Telecom is his passion for finding the story, giving unique people and organizations a voice, and exploring what really makes people tick. He says he makes art from commerce and has a lot of fun doing it. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Matthew Whalley, co-founder and managing director at Ilex Content Strategies. Matt, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this journey. We'd love to hear more about you. From which part are you joining this podcast today, and where do you originally belong to?
Well, thank you, Anurag. It's an honor to be part of the podcast, and I actually follow Humans of Telecom on Spotify, so it's great to see it on the platform. So today I'm in Chichester, which is about 5 minutes from West Wuthering Beach on England's south coast, but I'm originally from Vancouver, Canada.
Oh, I would have incidentally thought that you're originally also from UK. So you actually have been born and brought up in Canada. That's interesting.
Yeah, so I left Canada probably in 2003 to come to the UK and work in publishing.
Interesting. So, Matt, I think that leads us to our first question. We'd love to hear more about your journey. So, how's this entire experience been? How has it been growing up in Canada, firstly? I've been to Vancouver and I found it to be a really beautiful place. It has the right mix of culture, nature, and also commerce, I believe. So, I find that to be a pretty interesting place
Yeah.
to visit. And I'm sure it must have been a great experience growing up there. So, how was that experience? And
Yeah.
how did you venture into this world of telecom? I'm sure that with your creative flares, how did the two come together? And how did this lead you to shift to the UK? And how's the journey been so far? So let's hear it from you.
Yeah, so I grew up in Vancouver. I was always very international minded, always looking at, it's a great mix of different cultures in Vancouver, huge East Asian population, huge South Asian population. So as a kid, I was out and about in these kind of different neighborhoods, learning about different cultures, trying all the different foods. And I really wanted to get out into the world. So when I graduated from the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, I got on a plane to London the next day. So I was thinking, I want to go out into the world. London is an awesome jumping off point for seeing different things. And also it's a hub for publishing. So 20 years ago, it had a thriving publishing industry for print magazines. So in Vancouver, I had done a bit of entertainment writing. So I've freelanced as an entertainment writer, covering concerts, comedy shows, reviewing books, anything that was going on, working for the school newspaper. But I knew I wanted a career in journalism, and I knew that London had a lot to offer. So I flew over to London, and then after a few false starts, I got an interview with Capacity Magazine. So Capacity Magazine was in its kind of very early days, and Capacity is obviously the owner-operator of Capacity Events. Did an interview, said I was willing to learn anything, and then in 2005 they hired me. So it was kind of like a deep dive into the wholesale telecoms market. And if you think back then, everything was kind of It felt like a boom to me, at least. And I spent my mid 20s traveling around to every conference I could go to, writing more and more articles. And then eventually I became the editor of Capacity Magazine. So it was kind of like a pretty wild ride. We had that real startup energy. And then, I learned something new every day and I met tons of people in our industry. I love the networking and the community of international telecoms. And then, I'm still friends with tons of those people from the early days. Like, and telecoms has been really good to me.
Interesting, Matt. I think there's nothing better than trying to do something that is your creative passion and then you're able to actually get paid for it. Something like what they say that, finding your ikigai, of finding
Yeah.
the right mix of what you are good at, what you like to do, and whether it's good for the community and whether it can actually pay you for it. So I think you've managed to crack that code. Awesome. And Matt, within this super exciting journey of yours of creativity, is there some specific moment which has been like a turning point or a special impactful moment that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Sure, sure. So I think launching and growing Ilex was absolutely massive. Like we kind of came from the industry. My background, obviously, in wholesale telecoms. We kind of created Ilex from the ground up to serve these kind of businesses. So I remember one specific moment. I was at the Century Club in London, meeting some old journalist friends. It's kind of a private club where a lot of journalists hang out. And my phone rang, and I got a call from Epsilon. Epsilon is a global telco that's now owned by KT, and their marketing team confirmed they wanted to work with Ilex. So I was kind of stepped away from the table. I took the call, and they said, let's do this. I like your proposal. I like what you guys have to offer. And then that kind of just kicked everything into gear. So we got to put our borderless PR model into action. So like we believe we could do PR anywhere in the world from the UK. And then from there, we've really done every kind of marketing communications with Epsilon. And we're still in touch with so many great people from Epsilon, and then also the people we met through their partners, their customers. And it was just so much, we built so much momentum over time. And it was just a lot of fun. Like it was a lot of fun to be part of that journey and part of their growth journey. And when that call came in, I kind of knew things were going to work and things were going to kind of take off from there.
Interesting. So I guess sometimes there are these encounters which actually act as turning points in our lives. And I think the one with Epsilon and you has been something very similar, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. And now let's put some of this work stuff behind us, Matt, and let's focus more on the human side. So let's know more about Matthew Whalley, or lovingly Matt, as we like to call it.
Yeah.
So, Matt, there is so much that we know about you. You coming from the PR world, you yourself are responsible for making people know about other people. But if there is something shocking or unknown about Matt that we don't know about, what would that one thing be?
Yeah, I love this question because it's we don't get so often as in marketing communications we're the guys behind the guys, so we're kind of a step removed and we don't talk about ourselves very much. So one thing about me, I guess I just say I'm Canadian, but I'm also Italian, and I used to speak Japanese when I was a kid. So it'd probably take like a whiteboard session to track my movements over the years. But when I was about 15, I won a scholarship to go to Japanese boarding school. So I did a year in Japan in a Japanese school, learning all kinds of things, and fully immersive kind of Japanese schooling. And then I spent a lot of time. I used to go back to Japan and hitchhike around Japan. And then the Italian side of me is I married an Italian Londoner, and now I have Italian, Canadian, British kids. So they're all kinds of mixed up, and they love it all. So they love the outdoors, they love food, and then they love rugby and cricket as well.
Interesting, Matt. So I was actually quite intrigued when you started your greeting in all those fancy words and languages, and I thought I'll find the most appropriate time to ask Matt about it. So now it explains. So your greeting was actually a mix of English, Japanese, and Italian put together, huh? That's what it was.
Yeah, it's a few words. My language skills have faded over the years, but my Italian skills are getting better.
Awesome. And I think Italy is also a land of so much of history and culture. And I'm hoping your children would be adapting that side also. So they have a maternal side which brings in that deep rooted culture, and they have a paternal side which already has a flair for creativity. So I think that's a very eclectic mix we've got out there.
Well, thank you very much. It's I think we're an international family. I think that's how we look at it.
Awesome. Awesome. And Matt, while you shared so many interesting facts, but is there anything else specific that you do to recharge yourself? How do you make sure that those juices of creativity keep flowing within Matt? So, what are your passions and interests like?
Sure. So I live in the UK, but still, I'm still a Canadian at heart. So I love hiking in the woods. I love the outdoors. On Saturday mornings, I've got a Romanian rescue dog named Bruno, who we try to do 2 to 3 hours hiking in the South Downs National Park. He's a crazy guy. He has his own issues, but he's also full of joy. So I take him out. We go hiking, and it's a great way to decompress. So I get out in the forest, breathe deeply, and enjoy it and see nature and be a part of it. And then I'm passionate about music. I love music. So in the evenings, I've got about 2,000 vinyl records. So I've collected those over the years, probably since the mid '90s. So I buy records everywhere I go. If I'm in Dubai, I buy Arabic records. If I'm in France, I'll buy French records. It's just something I do to create memories. So, if I'm at a conference, I always try to duck out and buy some records. If I'm at a client meeting, I'll look where the record stores are. And, it creates memories, and it also marks time. So I can put on a record. I remember where I bought it, the year I bought it, who I was with, what the kind of atmosphere was. So, yeah, so I love the woods. I love being outside, but I also love coming home, spending an evening with my records.
Awesome, Matt. So I think for all the listeners out there, whenever you are at an event next and you bump into Matt Whalley, make sure to ask him that has he purchased his record for the trip or not, or what's in store.
Yeah, I always get out there. I'm always looking, and occasionally I have a client meeting, and I'll see a record store right around the corner, and that brings me a lot of joy.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. And now another interesting question that I'm going to ask you to tell us two truths and a lie. And Matt, I'm expecting all of them to be equally exotic and interesting, making my life difficult to figure out which one is a lie, but I'll give it a shot. So, do you have three statements for us today?
Definitely. This might be a tough one, Anurag. I'm going to challenge you on this.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. So, first one, I studied Sanskrit literature at uni, but I've never been to India. So that's one. Number two, I never eat Italian food in a restaurant. I will never, ever eat Italian food in a restaurant. Number three, I studied under a Michelin-star chef, and I originally wanted to be a professional chef.
You're right. It's actually difficult. Very smart. Well played, Matt. Well played. But I think I have some things which I can now gather out here. So if somebody has a better half who's Italian, then there can't be anything more traditional than eating home cooked Italian food.
100%.
So I will say that the second one is a truth that you don't eat Italian food outside. And that's like me, people say that, do you like to eat Indian food outside? And I'm like, no, as an Indian,
Exactly.
one thing I'm not very comfortable eating is Indian food outside,
Yeah, 100%. You're correct. And my father-in-law, who's from Naples, he once scolded me. I said, "Oh, your pasta and your meatballs taste like a restaurant. That it reminds me of a restaurant." And he said, "It will never be as good in a restaurant." And he got very angry at me. So that's definitely true.
Okay. I'll go with the first one being a truth as well. It sounds very interesting if you've made this up or if there is a story behind it. But I'll presume you've learned the Sanskrit literature. And for many people who don't know, I mean, I've learned a bit of Sanskrit myself, especially given that I'm from India and we have Sanskrit as an optional course during our schooling days. So I'll assume that you have learned Sanskrit, and I'll hope that I get a chance to host you in future. And at the moment, you've not visited India. And lastly, yeah, well, that Michelin-star chef story also seems very interesting. I'm very tempted to say that that's also a truth, but I hope there's a story around it. So just for the sake of this question, I'm going to say that's a lie, and the first two are truths. So
Hey.
how have I fared?
You got me. You see, you said it was tough, but then you got it. You absolutely nailed it. So I studied Sanskrit literature. I didn't study Sanskrit. I studied literature. So at UBC. So I have a degree in Asian studies. So I went my time in Japan translated into studying Asian culture, history, and that included India. But the sad thing is, I missed a trip to India with Tata Communications. I was invited to go to India, but my passport was with the Home Office while I was applying for visas in the UK. So I couldn't go to India. It was going to be my big trip, and Tata Communications was such a gracious host, but I was unable to go. So you nailed that one. I always loved literature. I always loved reading lots of books, and I love books from different parts of the world. So yeah, studied Kalidasa for one term at uni. And then you got it. Number 3, Michelin-star chef. I would never, ever want to be a chef. I couldn't handle that kind of pressure. I love food. I'm crazy about food, but I would never, ever want to work in a kitchen. It just give me content, give me writing. I just don't have a mind for that kind of pressure.
Perfect. You have an appetite for good literature, but not so much for cooking good food.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. I think that was some very interesting 3 statements out there, Matt. And we really hope and pray that soon your trip to India also becomes a success and you do come over soon. We'd love to have you here.
Yeah, I'd love to visit. I can't wait.
Awesome. And the final question of this section, that if there's one thing you could change about your life, what would that one thing be?
That's a tough question because I feel like being very lucky and being very blessed. A lot of great things happen in life, but I wish I could just switch off more. My brain is just buzzing all the time. So even when I'm out hiking, I'm out with Bruno, my dog, I still jump back to work. I jump back to things I need to do. I want to see campaign results, or there's something that I'm working on. I just have a huge challenge with switching off. So I guess it shows I care, but if I could just switch off on a Friday night, then I think my weekends would be a lot more fun. So yeah, that's one thing I'm working on, trying to figure out ways just to switch my brain off a bit. But yeah, it's a challenge, massive challenge for me.
Yeah, and I think it's not just for you. I think this is a global phenomenon. And the more that we are connected with each other, I think we just tend to never switch off. But for sure, I think that's something which we could all learn to take up in our lives.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, we've been having a super interesting conversation as I expected. And we are now off to our final question, our signature question. What does being human mean to you? What sort of a human being would you want the world to remember you as?
Yeah, you saved the tough questions for last, as always. This is a good one. This is a great question. So to me, it's about building connections and relationships and really kind of throwing yourself into whatever you do. So getting out there, getting involved, and just experiencing things like the Ilex team. Like I love the Ilex team because we're all kind of unique people. We have different personalities, but we come together collectively to do things as a unit. So I love that kind of stuff, that kind of connection, being part of that team, part of that community. And the great thing is there are different kinds of people getting involved and contributing to make something special. So, that's what I really love. And kind of in the same vein, I think I'll be remembered as someone who's never turned down opportunities or experiences or chances to learn or try something new. And I might drive my wife crazy. But at a restaurant, I'd rather try something I've never had on the menu and not like it than to have something I've already had and enjoyed. She's like, why don't you just get what you like? I said, but I want to try something new all the time. I really, even if I'm not going to like it, at least I've had it and then I know I don't like it. So, it reminds me of this Italian saying, which I say all the time, and I'd probably be on my maybe gravestone. But there's an Italian saying that says, "It's better to die of drink than of thirst," and I really believe that.
Interesting. I think that was a very interesting thought that you had out there. So they also say that in future in your life, when you look back, you always regret all the things which you held back from doing rather than the ones which you actually took a risk and did. And I think it's always good when we push our boundaries. It actually stretches us to try new things, experience new frontiers, and it always keeps us sort of in that ever learning mode. And I think that's very important for us as a human. So totally resonate with all your thoughts out there, Matt. And on that note, Matt, I think we had a super interesting conversation. I think this was far more fascinating than I even imagined it to be, because we've not caught up for a long time. But I had this inkling that this person who's already coming with such a creative mindset would be able to bring in the right flavor, the right spice into this conversation. And you've done exactly that. So on that note, Matt, thank you so much for taking out time from your busy schedule and having this conversation with us today. And I do hope in future at one of the events, or more importantly in India, I get a chance to meet you
exactly.
And we cross our paths here.
Well, thank you very much, Anurag. This has been awesome. I'd love to share some of my thoughts and talk to you. And I just want to congratulate you. I think you have more than 50 episodes so far, and super dynamic, and you're really digging into who people are. And like, you go to conferences, you talk to people, but you don't know who they are beyond the business life. Yeah. So it's just awesome to dig into that.
Thank you so much, Matt. Just trying to do my bit, and it's been a super supportive community behind all of this. So thank you to you and to everyone who listens and supports this initiative. And on that note, thanks a lot as always to our wonderful listeners. Thanks a lot for tuning into this show. We hope this episode gave you a good glimpse of the human side of Matthew Whalley, someone who's a multifaceted personality and not only is a super creative person, but also brings the right mix of entrepreneurial mindset. Someone who doesn't hold back from trying something new, a music records lover, a nature enthusiast, a Canadian, Italian, coming with the right dash of Japanese as well. That for us is Matthew Whalley. So, if you enjoyed today's episode, do stay tuned in, because we shall soon be releasing yet another episode and another compelling story from our telecom space. And do follow the podcast on your preferred streaming channel. On behalf of Humans of Telecom, this is your host Anurag Aggarwal signing off for now. Take care.